In a land far, far away, behind a pair of microphones, two generic guys said that most novel of phrases. We should start a podcast. And after months of postponing and rescheduling, they're finally ready to make it everyone's problem. The Dork Place presents Shit I Love with People I Like. New episode every Wednesday. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Shit I Love with People I Like. Thank you if you're tuning in tonight. If you were here this morning, one thing you might notice, the astute viewer would tell that this is not my normal co-host, Chase, next to me. This is a good friend of mine. This is Nikki. Nikki, Nicole, what would you prefer I call you tonight?
Nikki.
Okay, got it. Late for dinner, but sorry, bad joke. Well, tonight, Chase and I have been doing the morning show. If you're tuning in and you've seen Chase and I, we are still recording just the two of us in the mornings. But now in the evenings, we have freed up time for more shit that I love with more people that I like, which honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, might be a good name for these episodes. Just tack a little more on there. Anyway, before I get too far ahead of myself, I want to give Miss Nikki a chance to introduce herself. Nikki, tell everybody who you are, how we know each other, and leave out all the stuff about the hookers and
We've known each other for 20 years, thereabouts. I think, so we knew of each other in high school, like our sophomore year, but I think it was junior and senior year that we really became friends. My husband and I are the godparents of the children, who gets occasionally mentioned, as I was told. And also...
what children? No.
And so, and the aforementioned husband is the ever so infamous, the Todd. So, or at least that's what I've been told that he's called, or that his infamy is.
Hey, to be fair, one of my favorite streams that ever happened on this channel was your husband and I playing Enter the Gungeon together. And now we're going to have to find time. I've been telling him we need to find time to play Split Fiction. Somebody's got to play the damn game with me. And Baldur's Gate 3 now has the patch 8, which has crossplay. So
yes, that is super exciting. Mostly because, my version is the PS5 version. So, and I know he's got the one on the computer. So, like, being able for everybody to just play cross-platform would be really fun. I also really want to play Split Fiction. So I think you and I are going to have to arm wrestle for who gets to play with it first.
Listen, as much as I love my best friend, you can always play with him first. Far Cry from... So I want everybody to know, way back in college... I had to do a series of... I was doing interviews for one of my media production classes, and I think I don't remember exactly what I was doing with all the different interviews, but at one point I interviewed Nikki then, and this was between 10 and 15 years ago almost, and at that point it was a very academic interview. It was had to be, able to be submitted to class. Now, fuck all that shit.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I remember that interview, but I also am pretty sure I kind of fucked it up because I was trying to be so professional about it and be like, you'd have to stop me and be like, Nikki, you're supposed to respond with reiterating the question. And I'm like, okay, but I forget.
Okay, hold on, guys. We'll be right back. I need to talk to Nikki in the woodshed real quick before... no. All right. Well, Nikki, tell us a little bit before we dive into everything tonight. One thing we always like to talk about, or at least we usually do, is what's something that you've been watching, reading, playing lately that you've been enjoying or maybe even not enjoying?
So I haven't really been watching a lot of anything as far as like series is concerned. I've been watching a lot of Dr. Pimple Popper actually. She keeps coming up on my FYP and I'm like, okay, I have to actually watch her show. And I just some people like the reality TV where, you know, it's women fighting over roses and shit like that. I like watching surgical and other
Well,
types of
everybody,
whatever.
thank you for hanging out today. I feel like that's going to be all she wrote.
But yeah, nothing really all that interesting as far as the watching is concerned. But I have been reading a lot. I actually just finished a book today called The Plot. It's a really good book. And a brief synopsis of, well, maybe not brief, but a synopsis of it without any spoilers is it's a book about writing, but it's not like a nonfiction style book. It's the best way, like I said, to make it as brief as possible. It's about a writer who, you know, he's published 2 books and they haven't really kicked off as he's wanted them to. And so, like, while he's just sort of living life as a supposed writer, as he calls himself, he is teaching a class at like a very small university, or maybe more of like a community college. And he runs into, or one of his students is like this really pompous jackass of a guy, and is like, I have the plot for a super amazing novel. Like, it's going to get me all the signings, all the book tours, a movie, that sort of thing. And of course, the main character, Jake, he's like, oh, you know, this guy's just trying to blow smoke up my ass. Like, it's not that great of a plot. And when he reads sort of like what the book's supposed to be about, he's like, holy shit, he's not lying. Like, this is like a plot that I've never read about anywhere else. Like, he's not lying to me. And so the semester ends and he goes about his life. He quits teaching and decides to do like a writing sabbatical. But like the whole time in the back, like haunting, like that creeping feeling that something's coming after you, he's waiting for the novel to be published. He's waiting for, you know, that this guy's name to just pop up everywhere in his life. Time passes, doesn't hear anything of it, and he's like Googling his name and like the supposed pseudonym that he was going to find, and the only thing that he ends up finding is an obituary. And so it turns into like, oh, what a shame that his book was never published. And so like he writes a book using bits and pieces of the guy's plot. So it's like 85% Jake's and like the rest is the dead student. And that's exactly what happens. He gets the book deals, he gets the signings, the email, he gets it all that this other guy was gonna have. And then he starts getting mysterious messages, emails, letters from somebody under the pseudonym Talented Tom. And it's basically like, you're not the real author, I'm going to expose you. And it's just, it becomes like this whole venture of him trying to figure out who this person is. And like he uncovers like a whole plot behind the original plot of the book. And it's I enjoyed it. But yeah, that's really all that I've been reading.
I know, that sounds good.
Yeah. And listening to the new Sleep Token songs on repeat. That's kind of how life has been.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say, I've been mainly playing. So I was playing about halfway through South of Midnight, which is fantastic. I really love it. I think that. So I don't know. Are you aware much at all of South of Midnight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I've seen a lot of it on TikTok. I have seen like like ads like have popped up on YouTube and stuff.
Mhm.
It looks really good. And
Oh yeah, and it's really fun. It's not. I don't think it's like revolutionary in terms of like its platforming or its combat, but they're good. They're fun. I'm having a good time with the mechanical aspect of the game, and the story is fantastic. Like I absolutely love the melding of Southern African or Southern American folklore with African American folklore. It's the stop motion animation is really cool, and I think it really speaks to the review that I have coming up for it. I was reminded very much of so when the movie version of the play Fences came out. Um, Denzel Washington was interviewed along with the rest of the cast, and he had said something along the lines of, "A white director couldn't make this film." And someone asked him to elaborate. And he clarified that what he means is it's not color, it's culture. Speaking of the movie Fences, he's talking about, like, if you didn't grow up in the culture, you probably don't know what the smell of a hot comb from the other room when you wake up in the morning on a Sunday morning, what that smells like. You don't
mhm,
have that experience. And he's like, in the same way that I couldn't direct, I being Denzel Washington, I couldn't direct Schindler's List. That had to be Spielberg. It had to be someone with that experience, with that culture. And I feel like that's what kept running through my head as I've been playing South of Midnight, is that idea that it's not color, it's culture. And
mhm.
I think that, especially in the world that we're currently in, where so many people are advocating for putting on cultural blinders and avoiding the differences in cultures and learning about other things, I personally think that this does a fantastic job of opening perspective, conversation, and really just driving more empathy and toward other cultures just through learning about them. So I think South of Midnight is a really cool experience, especially if you have Xbox or PC Game Pass. It is on both, which is a nice way to play it, experience it, and then without having to make a financial commitment to the game specifically to play it. But I digress. I'm so used to having Chase here. I'm like, oh, he'll pick up where I talk, and I'm like, I threw you in the deep end with the sharks. Okay, one more thing before we move on to our main topic today. I always like to ask some sort of video gaming icebreaker. So I think I know the answer to this one, but I'm not 100% sure. Nikki, what is your favorite video game and why?
That is a really difficult question. Just because I as far as like games that I play a lot of uh cozy games. So I play like Coral Island, Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, those kinds of games. Um but obviously I'm a huge fan of all things Legend of Zelda. Like uh Legend of Zelda, Castlevania. Um what other ones do I really enjoy?
See, I was I
Well,
was
there's a lot of ones. Hmm?
I was waiting for Legend of Zelda. I thought it was going to be like Ocarina of Time, like off the bat, knock it out of the park.
I mean, yeah, Ocarina of Time is really the only one that I've played
Mm.
myself. Like all the other times I enjoy watching people play video games than I do playing them most of the time. Um but I have been like being pulled more into playing games if there's a multiplayer option. So
Well-
I've played a couple of games that I probably would never have played before if it hadn't been for multiplayer, like Saints Row.
And my hot take is that if you've played one Zelda game, you've played pretty much all of them. Because
Unfortunately.
because every time I'm like, hold on, let me guess. There's a dude named Link who is a hero, and he's got to save Princess Zelda from this bad guy named either Ganon or Ganondorf. I don't know if we're using the full name this time. In the land of Hyrule.
Yeah.
Every single Zelda game. Got it. Nailed it. Which one is he talking about? All of them.
Yeah, that is true. I think it becomes a case of like how pretty can we make the game?
I would like to apologize for my insensitive comments toward the Legend of Zelda fan. No. No, you're right. And like that is oversimplifying Zelda for sure, but I mean, I guess meanwhile my favorite Zelda game is Majora's Mask, which is definitively not that synopsis.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it was like, I feel like Majora's Mask is very much like, it has a different vibe to it. And again, that's only a game that I've ever watched and never played myself.
Oh, absolutely. I think mine, I mean, everybody knows what's the question is, everybody knows for years it's been the Legend of Dragoon. It has seeped its way, speaking of writing, has seeped its way into all aspects of my writing and pretty much everything creative. But honestly, I don't know if I can say that, again, speaking of writing, I think it might have been edged out, might have been edged out by Alan Wake 2. I genuinely think that might be my favorite video game of all time. It's definitely up there. God, I love that game.
Actually, you know what? I think I do have a more concise answer for that.
Oh.
It's a game that I feel like nobody else has played in Todd's home because I hear him.
Hi, Todd.
AJ says hi.
Hi, AJ.
Everybody say hi to Todd.
I am.
Are you guys having a sesh?
Yeah, I am streaming on his podcast.
Hi, Todd.
Stealing this.
I love that
Sorry for bombing the podcast. I hope everything is going awesome.
We love you, Todd, friend of the cast. You're always
I
welcome.
love you.
You were saying something, and then we were distracted.
But Brutal Legend.
That's the Jack
Buffy
Black.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is. It is such a fun. Like that was of the 3 games I've played from start to finish. That one was like the one that I did almost exclusively by myself. Like the only time I ever was like, "Here, help me," was during like any kind of racing mini games.
I feel that.
Because I'm not that much of a racer.
You know what?
So.
And this is a nice time to put a little disclaimer in here. For anybody who checks this out in any format, anybody who's here, if you enjoy any sort of games, you're a gamer and that's valid. If you only play games with your friend, that's valid. If you only play fucking Bubble Pop 17 on your phone, you're a gamer. Like, whatever you do, if you enjoy playing games, if it brings you any sort of enjoyment, you're a gamer, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Because too often we hear people try to gatekeep what a real gamer is, what a real fan is. Fuck that. If you like it, you like it. If you play it, you play it. Okay, X-Core Gamer Skills just brought up in the chat Hello Kitty Island Adventure. That game is currently on sale on Steam, down from $40 to $31.99 before tax. And I I'm so close.
What a bargain.
I'm so close to buying it for the lols. Just to stream it and be like, best game ever. But it's so not. Like, I will say, it looks like a game you would like more than me, in the sense that, like, it appears to have, like, Stardew Valley-esque kind of elements. And I was like, oh, this is not my kind of game, but it is hilarious that it exists.
Did you know that Hello Kitty is not actually a cat? Every time Hello Kitty is brought up, I have to say it.
I know. She's a little girl who thinks she's a cat? I can hear it now. Liberals out here making their kids into Hello Kitties. Like, make the frickin' frogs gay. That is one of the most cursed facts. All right, well, let us know in the chat what your favorite video game is of all time. But let's kind of dive into the meat and potatoes of what we wanted to talk about tonight. And I want to let everybody know, I'm gonna pitch some questions toward Nikki, and let Nikki kind of start the discussion on these, because Nikki reached out to me and said, hey, I want to be on your podcast. And not like, I didn't go to her and say that. And I say this because I want to remind people, if you want to be on the podcast, you want to talk about something you really like, fucking come to me and tell me. Maybe don't tell me, okay, well, put me down for this day because we're doing it this day. But you can get away with that when you've known me for 20 years. But yeah, and I also just want to say, like, thank you, Nikki, for being assertive and being like, well, I want to do this, because that it helps. It's nice to be the first official guest. So thank you for that. And then the first thing I do want to say is I want to give you a chance to actually kind of talk about yourself in your relationship to writing in general. Tell us about you and your experiences as a writer.
So I feel like anyone who is in the creative sphere has that whole story of, I've known since I was XYZ years old that I was going to be be creative, like this whole thing. And for a while I kind of was like, I don't remember having that like creative spark. But the more that I thought about it, the more that I was like, actually, no, I did have that creative spark. So I really, like, as far as, I'm trying to think of like when my creativity, like the whole thing, when I went to actually start writing, probably would have been 6th grade. So we had like a creative writing project in my language arts class. And, I had fun. Like, I didn't really do, like, I even like doodled and like made my own cover and stuff. So it was like really fun. And, of course I got like 100 on it. And my teacher, and well, it's 6th grade. And in the margins, my teacher had written that she could really see me as a writer in the future. And that kind of, like, up until that point, I was convinced I was going to be a vet for my my career, and that didn't happen at all. And so, I kind of dabbled here and there with like just writing whatever came to mind. I don't really have like any kind of professional, except for I did like a 3-month internship writing for a local-ish. It's a local
newspaper, local newsletter.
Yeah.
Like, essentially.
So I did that for a little bit. And, my first degree was in creative writing. And then, like, I graduated, and then had like a 4-year writer's block. So that sucked. Like I couldn't get to I had been so, a lot of the times when people mention like taking creative writing classes, obviously I don't want to discourage people from doing that, because learning about like the technical field of writing is always a good thing. But if you're someone that's kind of a perfectionist, it could probably do more harm than good, because I would get so focused on the little things. Like I'd get like maybe 3 pages written, and then I'd stop because I kept going back and editing and editing and editing to the point where I'm like, I don't even want to look at this anymore. And what completely changed that and finally got rid of the block was I had like written up a random story outline, and it was in a folder that I forgot I had shared with a friend on Google Map or Google Drive. And so she messaged me. She was like, "Oh, by the way, I read your outline and I thought it was really good." I was like, "Oh, like really?" And she's like, "Yeah, and I also really like how you write my character, because no one, besides me, obviously, has ever gotten him like almost perfect." And it's like the veil lifted and everything happened after that. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say I'm going through a current block. It's just, I've been training for a new position. I got a promotion at work, so I've just been training for that. And so by the time I get home, my brain is fried and I don't want to work on anything. But I've been writing a lot more consistently. I have, a couple of ideas for some novels that I want to publish. But yeah, it's mostly just like little stories that I write here and there. Like mostly just stuff from the one urban fantasy universe that I've got going on. And yeah, that's kind of it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you answered the next question I was going to ask you, which was because I was going to ask you about the first thing you kind of remember writing. And funny enough, I love that we have different experiences yet similar when it comes to our writing background. So I'll go into mine a little bit. I have been obsessed with the idea of writing since before I could write, funny enough. I remember that my mom and my grandma used to tell the story that I would walk around from room to room, and after I would read not even read, but I'd watch like cartoons, and I remember Garfield being one where I would go to their rooms and I would scribble like I was writing a story, and I would tell them some story about what Garfield had gotten up to, and I would like write it out. And then from there, the first big project I wrote was about like 175 pages of this, what was to my young mind an epic, about probably 12 or 13 years old, I think. This epic that involved, because I was a huge Ninja Turtles fan, about these anthropomorphic creatures. And like it started with this wolf who went to a bar and then was ambushed by bird ninjas at the behest of a rhinoceros crime lord, and then they attacked his home with the old turtle master and the lion and the gorilla who were at odds. Like it sounds so stupid, but like I was invested in this like gritty crime drama, which is really hard to write when you are 12 or 13 years old and have no understanding of anything related to that genre.
I love how we essentially have had the same childhood, except you were watching Ninja Turtles and I was watching Tailspin.
I watched everything. No, but you're right. And like, writing was always kind of a part of everything that I did, everything that we did. We've had a lot of conversations and connections over the years related to writing, looking at each other's work, stuff like that. And I know that, like, I fell out of writing, I want to say part of it, a big part of it was, I fell out of it a little bit in high school when I went into, and I've told this story before, so I'll try not to drag it out. When I went into theater and I really put all my eggs in that. And when I experienced my first real soul crushing defeat and, from a professor at a university that I auditioned for, I quit acting and I quit doing anything creative. And I stopped for like a few years, just not really doing anything creative. And then when I started getting back into theater, going back to school for music, reading more, I balked at the opportunity to write. I think you could psychoanalyze me and talk about the inherent fear of rejection that I have. But while I've continued to come up with ideas, while I've continued to work on certain projects, for the most part, I haven't really written much, solely because, like I said, I think I just get in my head too much about it. And X-Core Gamer Skills, there's still no actual proof that I can read.
He just sees images on a piece of paper and
I just guess.
imitates them.
I just guess. I'm real good at guessing. Okay. Well, I do want to remind you guys, if you have any questions in the chat, go ahead and type them out, because I would love to get your guys' questions going on in here as well. What was I going to say? It's a Central States thing. It's a Kansas thing we can't read. Yeehaw. So when it comes to, let's talk about just a little more about genre and style. So, like, what are the kinds of stories that you enjoy reading the most, or experiencing the most, and what effect do you think that has on the types of works that you like to create?
So like, as far as like my reading and my writing, my main wheelhouse is urban fantasy. I've always liked like vampires and werewolves, but I was not a Twilight girly. I'm just gonna put that out there right now.
That's a lie. No, I'm kidding.
But like, yeah, anything like supernatural and stuff. So that's kind of the basis of what I've read. I've read all of the Dresden Files. I've read all of the Mercy Thompsons that are as up to date as they are. And like, I'm still looking for more series that are coming out. And I'm glad that I have this Facebook group that I'm a part of. And they're constantly, like, new authors are just like putting out their stuff all over the place and have all these new reading suggestions. But that's kind of where the majority of my writing and reading lies. I have been trying to dabble more, like expand my horizons insofar as like what I read. Because if you only stick to just the one genre, you really end up missing out on a lot of really good books that are outside of the you end up missing out on really good books by doing that. But I've also, like, as I was mentioning before, like the potential novel ideas that I have. I am trying to do like an actual fantasy. So like, I definitely am trying to read more of that. I'm trying to think of anything else in particular.
I've been trying to branch myself away from fantasy a little bit, because I'm not gonna lie, for a great many years, because when I was growing up, I read, Dragonlance books, the Lord of the Rings books, the Forgotten Realms series that D&D was putting out. Like everything that I consumed, the Wheel of Time, everything was fantasy. And so I still go to fantasy as my like first love. But one thing that I have noticed recently is you're right. Like it's understanding that you have to transcend genre in order to serve genre and in order to innovate within that genre, because I can read all the fantasy books in the world, but at the end of the day, all I'm going to end up doing is aping Terry Pratchett or, J.R.R. Tolkien. But the minute you read, and this is a legit project that I've been working on a little bit, the minute you take the Maltese Falcon and you go, okay, well, what if we told that story or something really similar that even follows damn near the same structure, but we put it in a fantasy world, like a fantasy version of the 1920s with orcs and dwarves and elves. And like now we've created something that's entirely different. And as we expand on that, we're still able to work within our framework that defines our work, but also able to incorporate things from other genres. And I think that's where you want to get to with genre, is you want to get to a point where you are able to meld stories. But as to my later point of like what will be your biggest piece of advice, I definitely think that a big piece of advice I give to people is read everything. Read everything, whether you like it, don't like it. Like, read a Western every now and then. Read a fucking romance novel every now and then. Read full-on smut. Read, if you haven't, either the works of Dr. Chuck Tingle, or the book Get Into My Swamp, which is like a Shrek romance novel. Read stupid shit. Read shit you would never read, because you're going to find something there that is going to resonate with you that you're able to bring to a different project.
Yeah, and to kind of add on to that point, if my brain will cooperate with me.
Good luck. That's Alzheimer's. Nikki's older than me by like a few months.
Yeah, and you like to say that I'm going to die first, so
I would never say that until it's true.
Wow, my brain just, I'll get back to that point. It'll come back to me.
We'll get back to it. In the meantime, I'll ask you what Kenny wrote here in the chat. What is your process for creating characters? Is it like D&D? Is it based on people something more close to home? What's your idea for creating characters?
So, I haven't really created a new character in a while, but I know that when I started writing, a lot of it came from like anime that I watched. Like I would take I would have a favorite character, and I know that we're going to bring up like fan fiction and stuff later on, but to sort of introduce and segue into that point, but like, yeah, I would read fan fiction about like the characters that I liked in various animes, cartoons, stuff like that. And I had never written any kind of fan fiction, but I kind of mentally wrote, I guess, if you could say. Like, I played with them in like my mental sandbox, but I didn't actually like write anything down about it. And then so they sort of, I eventually took out what made them the character of the show and started to like piece them together to make them more original and make them my own. Some of it comes from D&D. Honestly, any character that I've played in D&D has in some way, shape, or form is actually like one of my OCs that I've created. So, but recently there have been like a couple of D&D characters that I've created that I kind of just out of the blue decided to have, and they've made their way into the roster of my.
And I'll go one further. I have literally used D&D character creators to come up with ideas for characters. I have literally done it. I pulled out the book and like rolled dice on tables to be like, and sometimes I like to do this for practice with creating characters. You know, you go to, because they have the charts where they have like all the backgrounds and the classes and everything listed, and you can roll dice and just essentially create a character at random. And what I like to do, because I am a character driven person. I don't know if this just comes from me, if it comes from years of doing theater, but I love character work. That's the shit that I vibe with. And so for me, I want to know, like, okay, I rolled a human rogue with the aristocrat background, and his flaw is that he's got a locket that no one can open but him or something. And I'm like, okay, how do I take that and make someone interesting that people are going to want to know more about? And more specifically, that I'm going to want to know more about. Because I feel like the first person who needs to be interested in your work is you. You need to be like I like to leave mystery for myself and be like, oh, what is that amulet? Maybe I don't even know when I start writing this guy. Maybe I'm like, fuck, I don't know. Because guess what? In the beginning of the story, nobody needs to know why. No one needs to know what's in it. So just start writing it. And chase the thread yourself until you stumble across what it is. And I love to know. I like dialogue, and I know that that's weird. Again, that comes from screenwriting and screenplays and reading screenplays and stuff like that. But I love dialogue. And I will go through, when creating characters, to really understand them. When I have like scenes that are in my head, like, oh, I like this scene to happen between these two characters, I will script it out and talk about what happens in that scene. And then what does that tell me about both of those characters? And then sometimes I'll make up scenes and be like, well, how would they interact with this? And so I like to really kind of give characters time to simmer and to interact and to see where they kind of take me. As like weird as that might sound, or as like maybe nonsensical to someone who doesn't think the way that I do, but that's when it comes to characters, for me, I really like to think about what role they serve in the story, and what do they want, what do they need, and why can't they get it? And I think of that with everybody, whether that's like the bartender. The bartender just wants to make money, and he just wants to clock in, make some drinks, and go to bed at the end of the night and make his money. So that's what he wants. Why can't he get what he wants? Because motherfuckers keep fighting in his bar. You know, and so like every character that's why when you said like, I haven't created a new character in a long time, shenanigans, because every character you come across is a new character you've created. And I like to believe that they all have a life of their own.
This is true. And I've never, like, okay, I can't say that I've never heard that before, because obviously I have, but I had never thought to do that for myself. So that might be something that I
What do you mean
doing sometimes?
Which thing?
Like just picking up the player handbook and then just making somebody like completely from scratch.
Well, and for me it came from, because I played D&D at the same time as I was writing, and I was a huge fantasy kid. I'd be like, well, what makes for a compelling story? Well, you need a tank and a healer and a crowd control, and and I was like, okay, I need those things, not just because they serve a purpose within a D&D game of combat, but also they're kind of the four muses. They're the anchors, the archetypes. Also, every character group I come up with is in some way related to the Ninja Turtles. There's a leader, there's a smart one, there's a wisecracking one, and there's a smartass who's too tough for the rest of the group. And I feel like every group of four breaks down into that dynamic. But yeah, that's where it comes down to. And how can you play with that and subvert that,
Yeah. And then sometimes you just want to write and it's just vibes, head empty, no thoughts.
Yeah. I'm terrible with that. So there was an exercise I saw once that was like, just start writing. And they were like, with no intention, just start writing. First thing that pops into your head. And like,
it's the worst. I hate those prompts because it puts you on the spot. And it's like, no, I can't just.
You know what I like to do? Close your eyes and listen. And the first thing around you that you catch that sounds like out of place, like that breaks the silence or the ambiance, write about that. What was it? Where'd it come from? Or like, even if you're like, oh shit, was that a stick? Snap, a stick broke in the distance. Bartholomew the Seventh stopped where he was and knocked an arrow on his bow. Like, there you go. Like, you're just like into something. Just a little tricksy. The first book, Nikki, is called A Troll Walks into a Bar by Douglas Lumsden.
Okay. That sounds interesting. I'll have to check it out. I'm always down for like more book recommendations. Like I already have like an insane TBR, but eventually I'm going to get to a point where I'll be able to read, and that's all I'll do.
I'm incredibly curious about this as well. Just looking at this, I'm like, oh, okay, this looks cool. Sorry, I just pulled it up and I'm like, huh. I like it. Okay, so you brought up fan fiction. And I think that that's something that, like, Kenny brought up fan fiction. And I know we got a lot of people in the community that write fan fiction, that talk about fan fiction. I'll ask you, or I guess I'll take it first since I keep making you go first. I'll talk about my relationship to fan fiction first. Because oh God, I hope it's scrubbed from the internet somewhere. But there was a time when I was so incredibly proud of the groundbreaking Batman fan fiction that I was writing. For I wrote a good 12 or 13 entries into this, and they were like solid entries, beginning with the death of Batman at the hands of the notorious Bobby Billiard. I'm so fucking, how do I remember this shit? And I mean,
it's on DeviantArt.
I'm sure it is.
It's in my favorites.
You shut your you're done. Hold on, I'm gonna mute. Oh, guys, I don't know why Nikki has no sound anymore. Weird. Oh, there it is. But no, I was so proud of those. I look back and I reread them, and most of them are just garbage. But one thing that is amazing about fan fiction, in my opinion and in my experience with it, is you, the writer, already know these characters. You already know Batman, and maybe you're going to tell a different story with them. Maybe you're going to redefine them in some cutesy way. Maybe you're going to tell an original story within the world. But I feel that for a lot of people, whatever part you gravitate towards is something that you feel is probably lacking in your work somewhere. Like, and maybe I'm reaching a little bit, but like, you know, a lot of people don't know how to build their own fantasy world. So they write their OC into Star Wars and they're like, I know how to write this because I know this world, because the work's been done for me on world building. And the same is true with like characters, like, oh, I'll put him in my own world, but I know how Batman talks, I know how Batman thinks. You know, it cuts out a level of the work for you as an author, but it also lets you cut out that work and develop your skills. We've seen a lot of writers in the current, like what, I don't even know what we call this era, but this like modern era, who have a background in writing fan fiction, and some of their work is simply adapted fan fiction.
Oh yeah, that's a lot of that.
So
There's
I
a lot
think,
of that.
yeah, and I mean like, and the shit sells. You know, I mean, how much of Book Talk is adapted fan fiction? You know, someone, I forget her name, but one of the authors, I think it is within the Star Wars TikTok community, is wrote a Reylo fan fiction that she then changed a couple of the details and, you know, changed the names and the setting and stuff, and voila, now you have a novel. E.L. James, is that the Twilight lady?
E.L. James is the she's the 50 Shades.
Oh no,
lady.
that's how it was. It was the other way around. Sorry, yeah, because it's 50 Shades of Grey was Twilight fan fiction, right? Hey, but again, it works. You know, sometimes, you know the meme about like, can I copy your homework? Yeah, but change the answer a little bit so nobody knows. I mean, did it work? Like, do you honestly think, really, that anybody goes into 50 Shades of Grey and immediately your first connection without knowing it is, this is Twilight? Maybe I don't know Twilight well enough, but I feel like the two aren't, at first glance, immediately recognizable. I think you have to have familiarity with both to maybe understand. But what is your relationship and your history with fan fiction?
So I have always been a reader of fan fiction mostly. I have like maybe like 2 or 3 pages of like some fan fiction that I had come up with, just, you know, covered in dust in the hard drives of my computer. But yeah, no, I started on fanfiction.net, and then eventually like my new site of choice is AO3. I don't really read it a lot anymore because I read like other books, but it's every once in a while you'll feel you'll go and you'll rewatch like your comfort show or something, and then you'll be like, oh crap, you know, and then you'll remember a fan fiction that you read that of within that fandom that you're like, oh man, I haven't, like, I really want to go back and read that. And that's kind of like my overall relationship with fan fiction. I'm not sure.
You know,
Like,
I was gonna say, I do think it's important to, like I said, to recognize it. It is not hard to turn. You can turn a shit into, you can polish a turd, but you can't polish nothing. I was trying to think of where the fucking analogy was, but you can polish a turd. You can't polish absolutely nothing. If you write 3,000, 30,000, 100,000, words of fan fiction, and it all makes sense and it's good and it's coherent and you like it and people love it, you can take the major details that tie it to a fandom, and considering that they should be universal because the human experience is rather universal, more universal than it isn't. You should be able to weave that into a story that isn't tied to that specific fandom or that specific story that you're writing. I think it's really important. I know a lot of people feel like, oh, well, I just write fan fiction. I'm not a writer. Or I just write fan fiction. I could never do something else. And the two things I want to say is, just like we said with gamers earlier, if you write it all, you're a writer. If you draw, you're an artist. You don't have to be good. Quality is subjective, and it is not at all indicative of whether or not you are a writer. You write, you enjoy writing, you want to write, you're a writer. Like, you just got to do it, you know? And I think that that's really important because, again, oh, well, all I write is fan fiction. It's a hell of a lot more than other people write. You know, all I read is fan fiction. Okay, you know how many Americans can't even read? Like, functionally or illiterate? Like, you're ahead of the curve, baby. You know, and like, yeah. I just think that, again, write something, even if it's dog shit. I'm inspired by the episode of New Girl where Nick writes a zombie novel. Have you watched New Girl?
Yes.
Okay, well, when Nick writes a zombie novel, and it is perhaps the worst thing ever written by a grown adult, but Nick Miller wrote a zombie novel.
Yeah.
And so, like, I would say that in a lot of situations, we get into our head about, like, the quality of what we're doing. Just do it. You can edit something 1,000,000 times. Mm-hmm. You can have other people help you edit. But until you sit down and do something, you know, what do you have?
Yeah. And like a good real life example of this is, so I have a friend who wrote a book and she published it a year and a half ago. I've read it. I enjoyed it. And like for months she's just been stuck in this writing rut about getting book 2 put out. And her sister was telling her all about this. It's like a Genshin style game called Honkai Star Rail.
Mm-hmm.
And like the more that her sister talked about it, she just came up with this super unhinged fan fiction idea. And now she's like 12 chapters into the fan fiction. And she's like, I haven't written this much in months. So like sometimes that's what you need. You need to take a step back and immerse yourself into a world that you're familiar with, that you are comfortable in, and just go balls to the wall. Like, it doesn't have to make sense even. And I know that we're trying to keep things like on a positive note, and like, you know, I don't want to bring up anything to like.
No, keep it real, girl. Keep it real.
But some of the things that like the difference in how fan fiction used to be when I was, you know, late teens, early 20s.
Back in my day.
Yeah, right. And then to what it is now. Like back when I started like reading fan fiction, you know, it really was kind of like super lawless out there. Like you didn't have things like tags or anything like that. You could just be like, here's the rating, have fun. And like,
I'll tell you what it's always been about. Dicks. Always.
And like you could have like universes, you know, like crossover, and you could have like multi-shipping and all this other stuff. And now it seems, and this is on the basis of like when I used to be on Twitter, I finally deleted it and was like, I can't be on here anymore.
Yay!
But like a lot of it is just like, if the characters haven't had even a scene together, then there's no way in hell they could possibly ever be a couple. And I'm like, this is no longer fun. Like, that's the point of fan fiction, is you just kind of like you go crazy with it. Like it's fun. It's, you know, Looney Tunes. Like you gotta, at least that's how it always is for me. Like, you know, I've read like dramatic, like
You know, I think
posts and stuff.
I think you're right though. Like there's an unhinged beauty to fan fiction because there's no rules. Because it doesn't matter. Because what you're writing will never be, you know, you're not writing the next Sonic the Hedgehog crossover with Scooby Doo. Like that's not a thing. But you can make it a thing. And if nothing else, I do think it stretches a wonderful creative muscle to tell stories that you, again, are not going to tell otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking about getting blocked, and like writer's block and coming up with these ideas and stuff, you know, coming up with new things, I am curious as to your position when it comes to the use of AI in writing, specifically, like the use of generative AI. I just want to know what your feelings are, because I have opinions on certain things, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse. So I'm going to let you. What are your thoughts on the use of AI in writing?
So I have a lot of thoughts on AI in general. And like my thoughts on AI in the art space versus in the writing space. I know that writing is an art, but there is a bit of a difference. And it actually, in my recent round of college education, they actually, like, they weren't outright like being like, here, throw, you know, I want your assignments in ChatGPT, but they were very AI positive in the sense that AI is a tool. And so you use it as a tool in the way that best serves you. And I know that I've used Copilot specifically to kind of help me. If like recently, a recent example is the oh my gosh. So one of the novel ideas that I have, I wanted to come up with the idea of like a pocket universe that's similar to Madripoor in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like just this idea of like a place that's hidden and like shady business deals are done there and not everyone knows about it. And so like I was trying to come up with like, this is what I'm after, and like this is what, and then finally I was like, Copilot, give me something like Madripoor, give me a name like this. And they're like, oh. And so like I use it to help me with like finding names for stuff. I use it to help me make meal prep ideas, but that's a completely different story. So like I wouldn't use AI to write a novel because I have the skill to do so. But at the same time, I kind of don't have a leg to stand on in condemning someone for using it at the same time.
I'll condemn them. No.
I mean, like, using it to help you create a jumping off point, I'm 100% for. But I also feel like there's something disingenuous about, like, I know I've read it somewhere about this company is like, you know, we're going to use AI and we're just going to pump out all of these books. And it's just like, that's no, like, that's wrong. But I won't 100% say that it's bad because it does have its uses. But like I said, it's a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And you just,
good. Sorry.
But there's like, there's a right and a wrong way to use a tool. And sometimes, yeah, it's like you have a hammer and you can use it to hammer nails in, or you can use it to bust someone's head open. Like, it has two uses, but
I don't see a wrong use. No. Sorry, I've been playing The Last of Us. No. Golf clubs. Something about golf clubs.
My husband is. I gave him the rest of my cucumbers, and he's just eating them like a hamster over here.
Nice. Hi, Todd.
He said hi.
Oh, hi.
I have opinions on AI that are not like, okay. I think that you hit the nail on the head, pun intended, when you say that AI is a tool. And I truly believe that in all forms of art, the people who thrive and succeed in the next 10, 20 years of making art are going to be the people who learn how to embrace and use AI to make their lives easier, to make their jobs easier without sacrificing their creativity in the process. I think that the people who completely shun AI are going to suffer. And that's just because, again, it's because as much as I don't like the argument that it levels the playing field, it does to a certain extent. And I think that, yeah, you can get caught in the, if a company can mass produce 100 novels, what makes, the human touch special? And I think we all agree that, especially writing, narrative storytelling, this is a human experience. This is a human thing. And I don't think that anything, because the computer lacks perspective. The computer lacks experience. And those are the two things that that's why everyone has a story to tell, is because everyone has a different experience, a different perspective. However, I do think that AI is a great tool, kind of like Xcore is saying here about prompting. I have another story idea that is essentially, it's a time travel story of us going back in time and saving Harambe and saving the future. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Oh, I love it. Okay, I really do. But I'm always stuck on how to start it. And I'm always kind of stuck on where the plot should be. I get a little over ahead of it. So one thing I did was I went into ChatGPT and I was like, pitch me a story about a team of time travelers going back to save Harambe in order to save the future. I was like, what is AI going to give me? And the funny thing was, so AI gave me this plot synopsis back. And I went, I think that's kind of dog shit. That's not nearly as cool as what I wrote. I was like, I felt a little vindicated. But there was one thing that I was like, I could incorporate this part of it that I hadn't thought about before. And I was like, oh, I can put that in my story. Now I'm still working with my story. But this is like, I could have gotten this inspiration from anywhere. I just happened to get it from this particular source. And the same goes with, like, I've used it to be like, I don't know how I want to describe this jungle at dusk. Describe me a jungle at dusk. And then I look at it and I go, okay, so these are the kind of things to think about. This is what it's pointing out. And again, I don't copy and paste it, but I might use it to help me prompt an idea, to come up with a description that I might have avoided, or maybe even a plot twist I didn't see coming. Because like I said, I do think there's beauty in going, what's gonna be a good idea there. So, I mean, I think that AI has its uses. I think if you are creating solely using AI in any medium, I think that's problematic. Because, again, we're cutting the soul out of creativity. Also, that is an epic band name. Jungle at Dusk. Oh.
like, so I'm going back into the chat, and um is it Kenthkari? Is that the username?
Yeah, Kenny.
Username? Okay. So like going back to you mentioned the cosplay that you built. I have actually recently just done that as well. I've come up with a character that's just known as the Raven Queen. And so I have literally everything to take her out and tour her around at Renaissance fairs, but Todd's car has been in the shop for almost 2 weeks, and he's been using my car. And so this whole weekend, I wasn't able to go to the Ren Fair.
Oof.
And I'm super sad about that. But yeah, that is another, fun way of creating characters, is like actually coming up with like it's a way of getting immersed in your character building, is when you come up with like a cosplay for it. And that's something that I love to see more of, is seeing like people coming into costume as their own character. I just know that there has to be a specific like venue for that, because as much as I love the idea of like at Planet Comic Con or something, it's not going to work out because it's Comic Con. So it's like you expect more of like the known character cosplay. But
Yeah,
it says something about
absolutely.
it popped up saying something about a break. So
Oh, that's the ad breaks.
Mm.
I want to point out, by the way, that we are past an hour,
Mhm.
and you haven't disappeared once, but Chase is disappearing so many times, and I don't know what the difference is here. Chase, get it together. I love you, buddy. I actually want to ask you one thing that comes up a lot in fandom spaces that is the most annoying argument to so many of us, and that is, oh, such and such project had bad writing. Oh, well, The Acolyte was poorly written. Oh, well, the Star Wars sequels, that's just bad writing. What, in your mind, constitutes good and bad writing? Like, what is bad writing to you?
So to me, sorry, someone just popped up. My life is bad writing. I'm sorry that that's happening. But
Listen, whoever's writing
So,
this
like-
season of America, this is bad writing.
yeah,
Awful, terrible writing.
Get it together.
Sorry.
So that's actually kind of a difficult question for me to answer, just because I think looking at it because I'm on Book Talk, and I watch a lot of BookTube videos. So I'm seeing like, what it's like to be in like the review spaces. And the one thing that, like, you will have a book, you'll read a book and you'll think it's absolute garbage. But then you'll go on to like some kind of like book social media site like Goodreads or Storygraph or something, and they'll have like 1,800 5-star reviews. And it's just like, how in the hell does this book have a 5-star review when it's garbage, essentially? And I think it's all a matter of perspective, like your specific perspective. Like, for me personally, I will read a book to completion. Like, I know DNFing is a thing, but I don't, because I'm not a quitter. I will finish the book till the end. And like, I've never just flat out given a book like a 1-star, but I definitely give like reasonings as to why it's not a good book for me, or it's not good writing for me. But I feel like anything that's like truly atrocious writing, and I'm not even talking about like from like a technical standpoint. Like, obviously you'd be able to tell if you were looking at it strictly from the technicals, like with the lines and like the editing and everything. What makes a book, like what makes writing bad? And it's just the fact of like not having a point. And like I know that there are books that are satire, but writing something that is obviously not supposed to be satire and thinking like I'm trying to think of like an actual example.
Well,
So I don't
think about that example, because I'm going to piggyback off something you said, and I'm going to take it one step further. Honestly, I think that the only time we can refer to something as bad writing is if it fails to meet what we have considered to be objective standards for writing, technical writing and storytelling, unless it is intentional in the ways that it breaks those norms. And the reason I say that is like, I don't think you can't call a movie like The Last Jedi that makes sense from point A to point B, like all of the plot points kind of, they work, you can connect where things are, the characters, don't like, there's not anything egregious on the table, it's not like broken bad English, the conversations don't make sense, like I don't like, you can't call that bad writing. Like by all of the objective metrics that we would grade writing on, it's fine. Anything, a lot of times the internet has gotten us poisoned to a point where subjectivity is dead, and the only way to sell anything is to make wild objective claims. Like you said, you cannot like something. That doesn't make it bad. It just means you didn't like it. Like, again, The Last Jedi as a film is technically, it's a good film. Like, it doesn't, like, break any outright rules. You just don't like it, and that's okay. You don't have to like everything. But I feel like the term bad writing just is code for writing I didn't like.
Yeah. And I think I'm trying to think of like actual real life examples of. So one of the books that I've read recently, so far there's only been 2 books in the series, but a third one is being written. And I loved the first book. It was great. Hated the second one because it just. So here's the thing. I will read spicy books. But I also
smut.
Yeah, but I also have like a limit of like what, not necessarily it's like too spicy. It's just it gets boring because when it's repetitive. And when you have a book with a sex scene that's literally 2 chapters long, and these aren't puny chapters either, I'm done. Like I'm done. Like I hated this book. I don't say that very often, but I still gave it a decent rating.
But I mean,
like technically, if you like, the world building was great. Like the banter when they weren't fucking was great. I just got really tired of certain things, and I know that somebody else out there
might
probably
eat
loves
it
this
up
book to death. Yeah, and good for them.
And that's the thing is, like, I really do think, unless, like, if we're looking at a book that, like, okay, there are 7 plot holes that are never resolved, characters are acting one way in one scene and then changing to act a different way into another, and then there's like these gratuitous scenes of violence and sex that don't add anything to the plot. Like, there are ways to go, this is bad writing from a form perspective. And there are ways to say this is bad writing from a technical perspective. But other than beyond those two things, and even those are still technically subjective. They're just agreed upon subjectivity. Like, I have seen books that are written, specifically if you read a lot of books by African American authors, especially like we're talking early 19th century work, you will see a lot of work that is technically not very good. It is not technically good writing if we're talking about like sentence structure and language wise, but they're still good writing. They're still compelling. They're still interesting. And so I really do think that, like, I just think good and bad just can't enter the vocabulary if you're trying to be objective.
Yeah.
Don't like when it gets in the way of the story. Yeah, everything should suit the story, including sex. Now, that being said, smut, you also have to ask yourself the question, what is the story? Because in some of those books, the smut is the story.
Yeah. I mean,
You know?
and obviously if that's the intention, if it's a romance book or a romantasy or, you know, any sort of subcategory of romance, that's fine. A lot of it for me personally is when it's in a different genre of writing. And the book that I read was technically within the realm of romantasy, so it wasn't so much like out of sorry, distracted.
Squirrel.
It just kind of got tiresome. But I definitely agree that it can definitely get in the way of the plot in other like writing and like whether it be book form or even like TV form or anything like that. I'm also just paying attention to the chat.
So am I. And Darth Xerxes actually makes a good point here. Also, what's up, Darth Xerxes? Ineffective and effective, I feel like, is a good metric if we're talking about like the just generic quality of a work. Like I said, technical and effective are the two questions. And I think if your book struggles to be effective, then that would be bad writing because you're not getting the impact across. And if it is technically difficult to read, I would call that bad writing. If it is unintentionally difficult to read because of its grammar or its structure. Beyond that, learn to say I like or I don't like instead of bad writing or good writing. Because I do think it is important to also note that we go the other way and say like, oh, well, it's well written. You know, this is an incredibly well written film. What does that mean? You can say more than it was well written. Like, what was well written? The characters, their motivations, the dialogue felt real. You know, the structure worked. It kept me engaged the whole time. Like, there's so much more that you can add to the discussion than just, oh, well, it was well written or it was badly written. Because subjective statements like that just don't open themselves up to discussion. Look, need to see Matt Damon's ass as much as I did. Matt Damon.
I'm wondering, I was like, are you Matt Smith?
Matt Smith, who played Damon. Matt Damon. Ben Damon.
Oh, but yeah, no, definitely.
You know, oh, speaking of, I have to say this, X-Core brought up smut in a book where there's no point of the smut in the book. Talk about bad writing, okay? Talk about ineffective writing. I loved The Eternals. I thought The Eternals was a fantastic movie. I thought it was really well written. But there is the most egregious, ridiculous sex scene in the middle of that film that serves no narrative purpose It doesn't do, like, there's no point in having this sex scene, and it's not even like a titillating sex. It's like the most generic white bread sex scene of all time, and it's so strange that they put it in that film. It feels like it's just like, remember when we wrote the first sex scene for a Marvel movie? But it is so strange. For example, I watched the movie The Power of the Dog, and it's a beautiful movie, has all this stuff, and I hated it. I loathe the film. Yeah, that happens a lot, honestly. Now we're thirsting over Ben Damon's yeah, well, again, the E-Ray, the scene that happens, the sex scene in in the Eternals, it just feels out of place. Like, I think that maybe the intention is it's supposed to show maybe the banality of the relationship between names escape me right now because yeah. But between their characters, but it just comes across really flat and very awkward. It's like I don't understand why this is here. Icarus and Cersei, thank you. I don't know why those names escape me. But other than that, the movie's really good. It's just, what a weird sex scene. All right. What Marvel movie should have had a sex scene in it? If you could have put a sex scene in a Marvel movie, which one would it be? And why is it Captain America the First Avenger with Bucky and Steve? No. That was a legitimate question. Oh, Deadpool and Wolverine, yeah, after the car fight.
I feel like I read somewhere that was actually like again, words escaping me. I am so sorry. Would allegory? No, I don't know if allegory would be right, but like that's kind of like the idea that was behind it was you.
Oh, that fight is essentially them.
Yeah,
Makes
I read
sense.
it somewhere. I don't know if Ryan Reynolds said it or something, but I feel like I've read it somewhere.
Fighting and fucking, they both start with F. Makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, what do you want? What do you wanting to see?
Oh. We have a furry friend joining us.
Oh, is that Liapy?
Yeah.
I want you to know, I don't know, chat, how old this cat is, but I've known this cat the entire time I've known Nikki almost. Or I have. I don't know. It's close. I feel like this cat is like 104 years old.
She'll be 17 this year.
That's it?
Yeah.
I say that's it. Like, that's not a long ass time.
Thanks for the sub.
I don't know if you can hear the He-Man dance break happening in my ears right now, but shout out to E-Ray for the resubscribe at 9 months. Thank you. And so, yeah, we've got He-Man for non-blondes playing in my ears. Okay.
But no, I would have to agree with Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I think the
like,
other one,
you can't make Deadpool canonically bi and not let him kiss a dude at least.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that I think it's just kind of poetic justice to have Captain America have so much tension with so many men in the MCU. You know, Iron Man in Civil War, Bucky always, even Falcon, you know, like there's tension all around when it comes to to Chris Evans. So I think that you could put it in any of those movies with any of those guys, and for some reason, I think it would work. Oh. Well, other than if anybody has any other questions that they want to throw out, I will ask you, no TikTok, hush, shut up. How do you approach representation in your stories? How do you approach that? Fuck, E-Ray, we didn't even talk about that this morning. Sorry, but how do you approach representation in your stories? And how do you ensure that it's in a way that is like mindful and not culturally insensitive, especially when you're writing for like a character who is not from your one of your own demographics?
I think for me personally, it depends on the what kind of genre I'm trying to write from. And since I do write mostly in the urban fantasy sphere, I definitely have a larger opportunity to have a diverse cast of characters. And I do a lot of I haven't put anything out to the public in a way that allows me to have the conversations that I would need to have, but I definitely try to avoiding stereotyping, obviously. I don't know, I write people as people. And so a lot of the and maybe this could be a shortcoming, but when I handle people that are outside of my demographic, I just they're people, and I give them I try not to be basic about their descriptions. I build them into a full-fledged character, but I don't necessarily make their I don't really know how a good way of putting this. I don't if I have a character that's a person of color, I generally don't write about any kind of I don't bring it into my story, I guess is what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that it's always good to have sensitivity readers to kind of bounce those ideas off of, to be is this is this appropriate or anything like that? Because I actually, and this kind of links on to if I were to give any sort of writing advice, is find yourself a community of writers, because you will find that if you because I have a writing group that I visit with, we have a Discord, and we meet up a Sunday a month in person to share what we've been working on and just in general. And we also come have little mini hangouts where we go to Milk Float or some other random coffee shop in town and work on writing and just kind of talk. And there's a diverse crew of people there, and I feel comfortable to be okay, here's this character I've written who is Black. Please tell me if I am crossing any sort of lines or boundaries, and that's just basically the way that I do it when it comes to
and
I just try to be careful, and I try not to, even though it's based in the real world, I try not to bring too much of the real world into my writing, I guess. That's probably the best that I could say it as. None of my characters experience racism. None of my characters really experience sexism or any of that thing. And maybe that is, again, like I mentioned, maybe that's a shortcoming. But like I don't feel having having a black character go through some of the same shit that black people go through in the real life is like it has no place in the story that I want to write. So it's not going in there. But yeah, I definitely try to just talk to people about it and just be like, hey, and be accepting of criticism if you do draw, like if you do step over a boundary or you do cross a line or you're like, I know you made well, but that's actually more of a stereotype than a lot of people let on. So maybe don't write that. And then, that's great. And I don't. But I think so. Yeah. When it comes to writing diverse characters is making sure like having a community helps.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. Like, I think that sensitivity readers are an important thing in general. And I think that you should really always kind of default to that. Like, I think you should always check with other people and you're right not to necessarily like I wouldn't center a story around an experience I don't have. Just because now just because if I haven't experienced it, I'm not going to connect with it in the same sort of way that someone who hasn't. However, what I was going to say was I think hang on. Sorry. Now I've lost what I was going to say. It kind of fell on me now, the curse. But I'm
also like trying to keep track of the chat and make sure that if anyone asks a question,
right. I will say that that's what I was gonna say. So one thing that I have noticed from when I was writing when I was younger is being more culturally aware and more culturally sensitive. So I'll tell you guys, there was a story that my first love is writing comics, and there was a comic I wrote years ago. It was the first comic I ever had an idea for, and I thought it was fantastic. It was The Hangmen was the name of the theory, and it was this post-apocalyptic world, and the government was this it was this fascist government, and these 4 ex-military officers, or these ex-soldiers, were doing vigilante justice, taking it to the fascist regime. And I had the idea that the imagery would be really cool if they would, because there were cameras everywhere, they would hang people from like street lights, like members of this party, for everyone to see on the cameras. And I was like, I had the idea that like the first cover would be just the silhouetted frame of the silhouette of a man hanging from a street light, and it'd say The Hangmen underneath. And I will admit, when I wrote this story at 15, 16, and continued to write this story and adapt it well into my late 20s, before I paused to really consider what hangings signify to groups that I am not a part of within the United States, specifically. Mm-hmm. I began to think of lynchings and, hangings as punishment for a crime. And while I know that so many people would say like, but that's not your intention, that's not what you're referring to, in my head, I looked at it and I was like, yeah, this might be a cool visual, but is it a cool enough visual to justify rehashing trauma, generational trauma, for potential readers? And for me, I looked at it and I was like, it's not that cool of a visual. And so, like, in my effort to be more perceptive, more culturally aware, that's a project that I stepped away from and just haven't gone back to writing because I just don't feel like it. I feel like it was all built around this rule of cool of a 15-year-old boy, and I don't feel that that outweighs the potential like cultural damage. The last thing I want is a think piece being written about this work that's like glorifying lynchings, especially in today's political climate. And so I do think that we can also refer to, like, that kind of goes along with that idea of bad representation that I brought up on the podcast last week when we were discussing The Last of Us Part 2. I won't go into spoilers, but there is a character in that who is trans. And it's wonderful. It's awesome. There are so many things about Lev that I love in the show. What I don't love is that narratively, Lev serves no purpose other than to have their trauma exploited so that the white female deuteragonist can experience character growth and can know who and the audience can know who the bad guys are. Like, Lev's motivation and everything about Lev's character is wrapped up in his trauma. And I think that while not bad, because you can argue that any representation is good, while Lev is represented well, we can tell stories about marginalized people, about queer people, about BIPOC people who are not, or that do not center on their trauma. And I think it's incredibly important that we move in that direction of not simply representing people based on their trauma.
Yeah, agree 100%. And another thing that I believe is beneficial for people who are both writers and readers is to read more books that don't center white characters, who don't center white authors either. Like, because like there were, I forget which book it was, but it was a YA book for sure, but I remember reading it, and it was about a Black main character and about her experience as a Black teenager, and I was like, man, this book made me really uncomfortable, but I think in a way that makes me like really get as a more of like a basic understanding of what these people go through on like a day-to-day basis. And when you read more about them, you kind of get a better understanding of ways to incorporate that into your own writing and into your own character building. But yeah, go off of that.
Good, sorry.
Not centering. I guess you put it better than what I did earlier in the fact of like not centering their trauma and like not making that their sole focus of being in your book.
Yeah, especially unless you are telling a story, like, for example, South of Midnight is brought to you by an African-American team of writers and developers. Their story does discuss generational trauma. It discusses Black Southern American trauma. That is their story, and that is what they set out to tell. It is not my story. while I do think that we have things to contribute, everyone has things to contribute to stories. That is not a story I can tell. It is not a story I would want to tell because I know nothing about it. And now, could I contribute to, a team of writers who are writing stuff? Yeah, for other things. But when it comes to that experience, yeah, that's not my experience. And if I'm not writing with that experience in mind, if that's not my experience, you can just write characters to just exist, but being mindful of color. I just have to bring this up real quick. I'm not a big fan of the transphobic wizard lady's work, but I do laugh that in an effort to almost be colorblind, I feel like they've made a weird decision with the casting of the new series that I'm not going to watch anyway, I'll be honest. The only actor that they cast who is a black man is the character of Snape. And I feel like that is an incredibly weird choice to make, because I'm not going to lie, Harry Potter walks into that school and his first thought is, I don't know what it is about that Snape guy, but I just don't trust him. And now it's going to look racially motivated.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to look like, why does Harry Potter walk in and only not trust the black guy?
Uh-huh.
Now, I mean, I will think, my assumption is that their thinking is, if Harry Potter is set in the 90s, right? Like the Harry Potter books, then we go back 20, 30 years for Harry's parents, and now we're in the 60s. And if we make Snape a black man, well, then that makes him even more sympathetic as to why he and Lily couldn't be together. And but then you also risk running into this weird situation where, is James the bad guy now? Like how far are we making James? Like, I don't give a fuck about Harry Potter. I really don't. But I thought that was such a weird choice. And that's where I think that, when we talk about representation being, something that you have to take care with and something that can bring a lot of nuance, that was a situation where I looked at it and I was like, I feel like this was not well thought out.
Yeah.
But it is in line with Kingsley Shacklebolt, so yikes. As E-Ray brought up there. Well, I want to ask you, though, as we transition toward our way out, one last question on this main topic I want to ask you. Let's say somebody out there they fancy themselves a writer. What is your biggest piece of advice that you've ever been given and that you pass on to other people, or one that you can manifest now? If you want me to go first, you can tell me. Okay, good.
I wish that I had something profound that I was told by another person, specifically someone that I... Actually, no, I think I do have something profound. Go ahead and go first while I look this up.
Okay. I'll just give you, mine is not incredibly profound, but it is incredibly important. If you want to write, read everything. Read everything. That is something that we have said time and again and will continue to say. But I will say, prioritize reading stories that are not directly in the works that you're wanting to create. And the reason I'm saying that, this is the me part of this, is if you want to write high fantasy, odds are you want to write it because those are the stories that you grew up reading and you want to bring your own take to that. But if all you read are high fantasy novels, all you're going to be doing is retreading the same ground that has already been tread, because that's all you know. You can't grow, you can't express something new if you haven't experienced something new. So go and read murder mysteries. Go read biographies. Go read history textbooks. Go read letters from survivors. Go read turn of the century novels. Read from other countries, from other cultures, from other genders, from other sexualities. Read everything from people that aren't like you and aren't what you're wanting to write, because that's what's going to make your writing feel different. You express through osmosis all of the things that you've experienced and that you've absorbed, and then you bleed that onto the page as this weird glob, this Jackson Pollock of art that people now like can interpret their own way. But if you don't bring something new to the table, then why are people going to care about the work that you're creating? And I think the only way to bring something new is to take elements from outside of your genre and feed them into your genre. So go ahead and give us yours, and then I'll take a look at what this Dark Xerxes question is.
Okay, so the profound thing that I wrote or that I saw was actually not in regards to writing itself, but so this actually piggybacks off. So that thing that I completely blanked on earlier, I remembered it as I said I would. So when I was getting my first degree, the one in creative writing, I remember going through it and being like, I know what I want to graduate with. Why do I have to take all of these electives and all these other, fuck ass classes that have nothing to do with my degree? Listen, those fuck ass classes are actually like gold to a creative, because you have to take a geology class, you have to take a biology class. I took a cultural anthropology class that helped my build, like character building, my world building. So like you can find inspiration in literally anything that you like visually ingest, I guess is what I was trying to say. And I think my two big pieces of like writing advice that I've kind of like are my own like little motto, are like just write. Not necessarily in like the single prompt thing like we were talking about earlier, but it's just like, sorry. I'll go to the second point. The second point is even though you said like adding something new to the conversation, but also remember there's no such thing as an original idea anymore. Just when you think you come up with an original idea, bam, a new book comes out and it has that exact same idea. But people will, if a person, a reader, likes a trope, they're going to keep reading that trope. So don't worry too much about, being just another fish in the sea, so to speak, because honestly, that sells. I'm taking like a certification course in like editing and publishing. And that's one of the things that that's something that I'm going to be learning, is the fact that, you learn what sells in the industry. But yeah, that's, but also like, yeah, keep right. Like everybody's first draft is ugly. Like nobody writes a perfect first draft.
And it goes, and to even take that a step further, no one's first novel is great.
Yeah.
Very seldom does someone write Citizen Kane as their first movie or Crime and Punishment as their first book. You know, like, you're gonna write a stinker. It's just important that you write the stinker. Otherwise, you never get past it. You never grow.
Yeah. Or somebody will write, and their debut novel is fantastic and amazing, and then they'll publish the next book in 10 years, like 10 years later. But yeah, and like you know, don't worry about the editing. Don't worry. Like, you could pay people to read your work and edit it. And people who will help you sort of slim and like take your idea and make it into
Polish that turd.
Yeah, exactly.
Polish that turd. But again, if you don't shit, you can't polish the turd. Metaphors, baby. It's my bread and butter. Hey, your audio did go away, so that part's not entirely Chase's fault. Oh. I'm going to take a second. I'm going to say real quick while I'm waiting for Nikki's audio to come back anyway. I think it's just a Video Ninja thing, not a you thing. There you are.
No, it's because I have this thing and it. I clicked it because I have the tism and I can't leave things alone.
I get that. Okay, but let me say, I want to give me a second to soapbox about something important that Darth Xerxes brought up in the chat a minute ago. So Darth Xerxes brought up, you know, why can't we get more stories about the South that, and I'm paraphrasing Xerxes, I apologize. Why can't we get more stories about like the American antebellum South that tell the story of like the beauty and the architecture and the good things about the South? And this is where we have to understand the nature of propaganda and the nature of politics and political climate on our art. So one of the biggest reasons why so much art that we still to this day make about the antebellum South focuses on the trauma and the realities of slavery and bigotry and hate from that time period. Okay, well then I will let me finish my thought and then I will clarify, Darth Xerxes, how that still relates. Because now we're having a different, I misread how you wrote that, so I just want to say this. But let me finish my thought and then I'll say something. The reason with those is because people who want to erase reality, who want to rewrite history for a political narrative, want to present the antebellum South in a way that does not focus on the horrible realities of a thing called slavery. And if we as writers stop telling those stories, then eventually it becomes easier to wash away. It becomes easier to sweep under the rug and to hide. And again, the problem is with modern Southern stories, we're still being held to this same, like, when we acknowledge like, yes, well, the South has such beautiful architecture. Like, for example, in real estate, we still refer to plantation style homes, but like to do so while praising this architecture style, while neglecting its historical significance, is misrepresenting the past. And again, it benefits only a specific narrative. It's very akin to when people say we don't need Black History Month because Black history is American history. Well, as you can see now, and not to get too political, when they take away Black History Month, it is not to incorporate it into general American history. It is to try and sweep it away and pretend that it never happened and pretend that it is not a significant part of American history. And so this is one of those ways that we look at art as propaganda. We look at art as protest, as having a political bent, even when you don't intend for it to. Even when your story is not political, it exists within a time and a place and a worldview that contribute to its creation, to the author's perspective, all of those sorts of things. And so it's not, I disagree with what E-Ray said there. I don't think it's just that every liberal thinks anyone from the South is a racist shitbag. I think it's that when you don't acknowledge the reality and the history, you end up in a situation where, like, I don't know. I don't think that every liberal thinks that. I'm just, okay, the narrative. Okay. I just think that in general, when we look at stories that present the South, especially in the world that we live in right now, we are in a weird current political moment where so many stories are trying to be taken away and so much trauma is trying to be, the people in power are ignoring stories, ignoring people, trying to erase people's narratives. And it is more important now than ever to ensure that those stories continue to exist and continue to be told. And they have not been, this is where generational stuff comes in. Like we were talking about this in Discord once about how if you are of a certain age, you grow up going, well, all I've ever seen are stories that deal with how shitty the South is and how racist it is. Son, talk to your parents, your grandparents, talk to us who are a little older than you, and we will tell you there is a plethora of material about the South that does not represent them that way. There is a plethora of stories out there from before this, like last 25 years or so, that does play the South in a very positive light. And so I think that what you're seeing is just an overall evolving of narrative and an explanation of different perspectives that wasn't there before. And I think that you and people around your age are just more used to seeing those kinds of stories. And therefore, to you, it feels more like you're only getting one narrative. Whereas for many years before that, we were getting the opposite, where we were only getting the other narrative. So I think there's a bit of a recency bias going along there too. Nikki, I apologize for going on that tirade. I do that quite a bit.
Well, no, I mean it's fine because like I was listening in on it and reading through the chat, and I know that. So that's one of the things that I really love about like the urban fantasy subgenre is the fact that it focuses more on like the mystical supernatural aspect. So a lot of the times the city in which the story takes place is itself a character. So you do get to experience like the world around in which the main character lives. But I also like have to agree with the fact like leading like what you were saying about like the narrative being taken away from groups. And also at the same time, like I'm sure that there is a lot of writers out there who have, you know, stories talking about the beauty and like the best aspects of like the South in this case that we're talking about. And it's just people aren't letting them get published. People are like telling them that it's not going to sell. And that's just the thing is I feel like that's a big problem. I feel I could be talking out my ass. This is something that I will be learning about in my class, like insofar as like how publishers think about like why they, besides the money aspect is obvious, because you want what you sell and what sells good, but sometimes,
I
and
hope
actually not just sometimes, but like hearing different perspectives is,
I think it's nice that we have
Yeah.
such an also like we have a burgeoning indie publisher marketplace, and there are a lot of indie publishers who actively seek out diverse storytellers,
Mhm.
people people who don't fit the conventional mold or whose stories don't, and I think that's just really important. But and here's the thing, Darth Xerxes, South of Midnight is a positive representation of stuff. It is also not always a positive story. It is an exploration of generational trauma as much as it is anything else. And in fact, I would argue that the whole story is about unraveling and processing trauma without without diving too far into it. It's the game that came out, South of Midnight, E-Ray. But oh no, I know what you mean. It's just I think it's also there's probably just a little bias of being a southerner who feels that this is the way they're portrayed, which is valid. And maybe I just don't share that perspective, Okay, well, we have been at this for a hot minute, so I think it's about time we start wrapping this up. So I do want to move on to my final thought. I want to give you an opportunity to say any of your final thoughts, but the biggest thing that I want from you is take this as an opportunity, okay? Everybody in the chat, you can do this too. This doesn't even have to be about writing, okay? But I put it in here as writing. This is our manifestation moment. What is, as a writer, your biggest goal? What is the white whale that you're chasing? What is it that you're going to accomplish?
So I'm slightly ashamed to admit that I was the biggest admirer of the turf wizard lady, because because of the story of how she came to write her books was compelling and inspiring to me. And like that's what I wanted, was to put something out there in the world that had a huge impact on people the way that Harry Potter did. But now it's more transition to the fact, just like, you know what? Just get something published. Like, I don't care if it does, like, if I only sell like 3 copies. Just the aspect of getting anything published is kind of like my manifestation. Like, I'm not after what the main character in my like in the recent book that I just finished, where he, is a writer who wants all the fame, but I'm not after that. I just want to write and put things out there, and that's really.
So is your goal, like, is it to write a novel, or is it to write like a novel that transcends a bit?
Yeah, I guess writing something that transcends a bit. I know that a lot of the at least the 2 big ones that I have planned out, they like, there's media that already exists in this particular genre. So I'm not like worried about that aspect. I definitely just want
Gay dinosaur robots, for anybody that was curious.
Okay, Chuck Tingle has that market already heavily saturated.
There's always
I-
room for more Tingle.
And like, I'm not gonna step on the toes of the great Dr. Mr. Chuck Tingle. But yeah, I just
You know, I'm gonna take my opportunity
Yeah.
to try to
was like,
manifest. let me
go ahead,
I'm
you-
like, let me try. So one is eventually one day we will finish at least one issue of Ghostbusters. One day it will happen. I have some missing pages at the very end that are, I think they're in the wrong file or the wrong folder or something. But I mean, we have moved toward a more complete version of Ghostbusters. But I think honestly, for me, I'm gonna manifest that I don't know. This is hard for me. This is why I wanted to put this at the end here, because what is my biggest goal as a writer? Like, I do want to write things that make me laugh and hopefully make other people laugh, like, you know, the Harambe time travel story. I had a story about two anthropomorphic multi-dimensional wombats whose enemy was a koala who animated giant rubber chickens down the streets of it's a wild thing. So when you say someone else is going to write that book, I triple dog dare someone to write that one. But
of all the story ideas you have told me about, I do not recall that one.
oh, that's
So-
yeah, ask your husband about the wombats. I'll tell you about it later. But my thing is, I just want to, at this point, my biggest thing is just wanting to prove to myself that I can take these concepts and make them into something concrete. You know, whether that's Ghostbusters, whether that's writing professionally for something. Like, hell, I would love to write for an indie wrestling promotion. That's a cool white whale. I would love to write promos or storylines for like an indie wrestling promotion. Like that's something that I love. So, you know, I just want to feel like I accomplished something, and I want to overcome the fear of it sucking. Because again, if you, and this is to me, but it is also to everyone else, if you write a book, and even if it is the worst book on the planet, let's say you write a book and it's the worst book ever written, that is one more book written than millions of other people will ever write. Even if it's the worst book ever. And there is something to that. I want to experience the feeling of just doing it. You know, just finishing something. And what not writing wise, I'll give you one more prompt with that. Not writing wise, I want to stand in some sort of independent professional wrestling ring, and I want to give a promo or take a chop or something just once before I die. That's all. What's your non-writer goal? Like one thing you want to chuck off your bucket list?
My one non-writer goal.
Just a non-writer goal. Doesn't have to be the one.
Oh my gosh. So I saw this really cute craft idea on TikTok about making plants out of like beads, like beaded plants. And I really want to make one of those. It's a very small, very like silly sounding thing to do, but that I don't know, getting like actually I guess being creative in the non-writing kind of way.
No, I hear
Definitely-
that.
I definitely want to travel more. That's for sure. A sort of not writing but book related thing that Todd and I want to do is we want to go to Chicago and do like the Harry Dresden tour. Like hit up all the places that are mentioned in the books.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that'd be
There's-
cool.
Because there's actually online I forget, like it's a virtual version of a type of map that, because I don't want to say anything to potentially spoil the series if you decide that you want to read it, even though it's the series, the book itself that it's featured in is like years old, but basically he makes like, it helps with the spell casting, and he makes like a miniature version of Chicago. And basically it's like Little Chicago is what it's called. And so somebody went and made a virtual Little Chicago and like created all these spots that are mentioned in the books, and like spots that are not necessarily like things that don't exist because obviously it's a bar run by a specific person, but hey, they serve like the same similar food or beer that this guy would have served. So this is a good, like, if you want the vibe of this pub, go here kind of thing. And so that's something that we really want to do.
Nice.
And I actually, so my urban fantasy is set in Washington because I co-write with a friend that lives out there, and so it's super easy to navigate because I go there fairly frequently, and so like I even used that map to like pinpoint fictional areas where like certain characters, either where they live or where their businesses are at.
Nice.
So just a fun. Basically, I'm doing all these cool little things to keep from writing.
Would we be writers of any sort if we didn't find ways to not write? I feel like that's a universal writer experience. It's not writer's block. It's not lack of wanting to do it. It's just, I'm just so busy right now. And I got this thing, and the weather's not right, and I got this like twinge in my shoulder, and oh, is that the dog barking? And no, we can.
The sun's just not in the right position.
Yeah, exactly. It's got to be the golden hour, and I didn't eat enough at lunch today, and whatever excuse you can come up with. So go out, break your excuses, and go create something. Even if it's bad, go create art for the sake of creating art. That's what I want you to take away from today's discussion. Now, Nikki, as we're wrapping this up, tell the people if they want to find you, if they want to engage with you or your artwork or anything like that, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I don't have like literally anything like out in the world that can be like read or anything, but I just joined your Discord, so like I'm always available to be tagged there.
Do you have
That's
any
pretty.
Do you have any social media that you want to plug? You don't have to if you don't want to.
I don't have any. I mean, I have social media, but nothing worth plugging.
No, that's
at
fine.
the moment.
That's fine.
If that changes, you'll guys be the first to know. But yeah, I don't really have. So yeah, Discord is really the best way to get a hold of me. If you
Well,
wanna
we
get a hold of me.
do
I'm
have
always-
within my Discord a whole section dedicated to writing. Darth Xerxes utilizes it quite a bit to share stuff that they've been working on. You are more than welcome to reach out there. And Nikki said you're more than welcome to reach out to her for some of her more expert advice than what I have to offer.
I don't know if it's expert, but I did go to school for it, and like I'm always like I'm in the process of like getting myself into a position where like I can become a
Hey, stop selling yourself short. Okay?
Yeah.
Own it. Like you said, you ain't got no social media presence. Don't nobody know for sure. You could be the Queen of England. Okay, maybe not the Queen of England, but you get my drift.
Yeah.
Believe in yourself. Believe that your art and your capability to make art is as amazing as you know that it really is deep down inside. So everybody, thank you for coming out tonight. We really appreciate you being here. Nikki, again, thank you, not just for being my friend for, the past 2 decades, for putting up with me all this time, but also for being the first official guest of Shit I Love, being the first people I like beyond my co-host Chase. I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And to everybody else, I will see you guys tomorrow. I don't know exactly what we're going to do. I've been very scatterbrained. It's been a tough couple of weeks, like I talked about, but I will tell you, good news. Next week is a cool week because next week is my Birthmas week, and we've got the release of Expedition 33 Claire Obscure. We've got WrestleMania this weekend, which if anybody cares about wrestling like I do, is a huge deal. We've got the premiere of Andor next week, so definitely next week we're going to be talking Andor on one podcast, and we're going to be talking with Claire Obscure. One of my personal favorite things to talk about is the difference between turn-based, or what's better, turn-based combat or action combat, because I personally I will fight to the death for turn-based combat. And then the next day after I turn really old, don't forget to tell Mama P happy birthday for turning just as old. So that's the kind of stuff we can look forward to next week, is those sorts of discussions. And we will I'll have to get some people together for the Andor season 2 episode 1 discussion next week. Thank you guys for keeping me honest thinking about that stuff. Other than that, I hope everybody has a good night. This is that moment where I wish we had come up with a witty outro line. We're still fishing for one that we haven't quite gotten there yet. But you know what? I'll say this. Go forth, my friends, and talk about shit that you love with people that you like. We'll see you next week.